Alright, this is for those of you that needed help with number 5. When we're looking at number 5, what I want you to focus in on is the part that's in parentheses. That's a trig value squared with a 1. So this is definitely where we would want to focus in for trying to figure out what to do in this problem. That is telling us to focus in on an identity. Since it's a trig squared and a 1, we are looking over here at our Pythagorean identities. And since it's cosecant squared, I'm definitely looking at this bottom row. There isn't a direct substitution I can make here, however, so what I'm going to plug in for is just the cosecant squared. That's what I'm going to plug in, as I know cosecant squared is equal to cotangent squared x plus 1. Some of you might be tempted to do something like 1 over sine squared. That's just not helpful because that doesn't get rid of the minus 1 in the problem, and that's definitely something we want to get rid of. So to get rid of the minus 1, I want to use one of the trig identities that has a plus 1 in it. So that's why it's more helpful to look in the Pythagorean identities, because it gets a positive 1 in there next to our negative 1. Because watch how this all falls into place next here. So I'm just writing out the rest of it. So now the minus 1 and the plus 1 will cancel, and we get sine squared x times cotangent squared x equals cosine squared x. And now I can make a switch in for cotangent squared. I know cotangent squared is down here. It's cosine over sine. So I can swap in cosine squared x over sine squared x. And then the sine squared is going to be on the top of that fraction. And what ends up canceling is the sine squareds. So we get cosine squared x equals cosine squared x. Check. It's not the only way to do this problem, it's just the most efficient way and using the strategies that we've been talking about. So if you did do the problem differently and you're not sure if it's right or wrong, feel free to send it to me and I'll give you an indication on if that looks right or not. Alright, here is number 8 for those of you that need to see number 8. This is similar to the second one on yesterday's class kick. So the big deal with number 8 is dealing with the sine x plus cosine x in the parentheses. That's where we would want to focus. Is since it has the parentheses with the squared on the outside, that means we want to write that twice. That's really sine x plus cosine x times another sine x plus cosine x. And in the end, that's supposed to equal 1 plus 2 sine x cosine x. Since now I wrote it out twice, you do need to double distribute this. You need to do sine x times sine x, which is sine squared x. Be careful about that. Then it's sine x times cosine x. That's plus sine x cosine x. I chose that order because that's the order it is on the right side. Then we distribute the cosine to everything. That's going to be plus another sine x cosine x together. And then cosine times cosine is plus cosine squared x. I'll squeeze that in there. So that was your second step. First step, write it out twice when it's squared. Second step, you want to FOIL it together or double distribute it. Now you want to combine, as I can combine these two. Sine x cosine x plus another sine x cosine x gives me 2 sine x cosine x. And then if you compare that to what we have on the right side, we are starting to get closer. That is on the right side right now. So we've got that part matched up. It's this part that still needs to get changed. So that's what I would focus in on. And maybe it would even be helpful to write them next to each other. I think it would be super helpful. And this is the same thing you could do on that second problem on the class kick too, and I saw some of you do that. Because now that I put them next to each other, if I look at sine squared plus cosine squared, and I look over here on my identities, sine squared plus cosine squared is really just 1. So we get 1 plus 2 sine x cosine x equals 1 plus 2 sine x cosine x. Check. So hopefully that helped you to figure that out. Again, be careful with your foiling. Some of you are just not being careful in that step, so hopefully seeing this will help you to find where your mistakes are. Thanks for watching, and enjoy the rest of your half day, guys.